therapist and how much the child was disengaged. So my hypothesis was that children with ASD would be more engaged with both the therapist and Milo in the student-led condition as compared to the robot-led condition. And my hypothesis was really driven by the research that was out there. And what you're going to see in just a second is I was completely wrong. So low sample size, so I used statistical measures that deal with low samples. And here are my findings. Let me orient you a little bit to this graph. This is engaged with robot. This is when the student-led condition. This is the robot-led condition, percentage here. So what you see is that in the student-led condition, the higher functioning children did better, engaged more with Milo than the lower functioning children did. And the same was true for the robot condition. The lower functioning children, minimally verbal children, engaged the same amount in both conditions, but there was a moderate effect of the higher functioning children engaging more with Milo in the robot-led condition. So let me show you what that might look like. This is Will. He's a he's a fluent child. He's about 14 as well. Will has moderate autism. He is really bad at his social skills, and his parents report that it's really hard to bring him out of his own world.
Make another choice. You can touch I.
So you see he's disengaged. Okay, I'll do what you said.
Whoa. Wow. You chose arm. You made my arm move.
And now Will in the robot-led condition.
Let's play a game. Sometimes I like to play a game called Follow the Leader. First, I'll be the leader. I'll do something. Then you do the same thing. Ready? I
Reciprocal.
can do it with my arm. You do it too.
Can you do it again? Good job. It's the same as Milo.
Great. You moved your arm. Try this one. I can dance.
Cool moves. Woo! Great job.
You do it too.
Great job. I think Milo likes that dance.
Great. You danced. Try this one. I can turn my head.
Okay, so this is the children were more engaged in the robot-led condition than the student-led condition. Now, what's really interesting is that Danielle tries to engage the children, wants to talk to the children. And there is evidence to say that out there that says that children will talk more to the co-therapist when there's a robot. And so I was looking at that, to his engagement. And what we found was when Milo was in the room, they were completely engaged with Milo, and they almost never talked to never paid any attention. I got 3%, the highest of 3.4% of the engagement to the therapist in the student-led condition. So really very minimal did they ever pay any attention to the therapist. They were completely engaged with Milo. Unless, it wasn't complete, they were disengaged. So they were either engaged with Milo or they were disengaged. Now, I also did a qualitative analysis, and what we found was that the lower functioning children took longer to warm up than the higher functioning children. This means they're disengaged in the beginning, they're getting used to the situation, they were organizing themselves in the room, and then they began to act like the typical, higher functioning children. We also found that the higher functioning children, like Will, also treated Milo as if he was a friend. You notice he talked to Milo a little bit. And so what I'm going to show you is Will really talking. This is a child who does not talk to adults very much. If he does talk to adults, he's scripting, he's in his own world.
You could dance too.
He's dancing on chairs too.
Dance with me.
He's singing.
Pretty cool, huh?
Well, kind of cool.
Kind of
But
cool.
when I first heard you, you kind of gave me a heart attack.
Milo, that wasn't very nice.
Just like you'd hear a kid talk on the playground, right? So, Will, as many of my other kids who I've seen, they go home, want exposure to Milo, and they keep asking, when do I get to go back? I want to see Milo. And Will, was also a client who I had when he was 3 and 4, so I know his parents well. And, well, he wanted to Facebook Milo, right? So really a friend kind of activity. And he went home and he made this construction, which is a robot, and he wanted to share his robot with Milo. So he's really acting as a friend. So to summarize what I've been saying is that Robots4Autism uses evidence-based practices to unpack relevant social information to teach social skills. Our research found that children with ASD are more engaged with Milo than the therapist, especially when it's the robot-led condition, especially when the robot is giving the child and describing social information to the child. And children who are more engaged learn better. And this is really good news for our children with autism. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Rollins, and just a few thanks in general. I'd like to extend some thanks to the Collier Center and UT Dallas for working with us over the last several years to develop the technology. Obviously, our goal at RoboKind is to see as many kids as we can utilize the technology and improve their skills and lead a more fulfilling life. I want to personally thank the team back in Dallas, a lot of developers and content folks that work a lot of really long hours to put this together. Also want to extend a personal thanks to John Williams. John's a longtime advocate for a variety of different causes, but really assistive technology in particular, and has done great work. Charlene Bloom and Christina Rosenberg from C. Bloom and Associates, our PR team, and longtime friends and colleagues. If there's any follow-ups after the presentation, that'll be funneled back to Charlene and her team. And we would just open it up for questions, and and Herb, thanks again for helping. But we would open it up and just let you ask questions.
Dina Marin with Scientific American. My question's for Dr. Rollins. Have you looked at Milo's performance with the kids as compared to a control of a kid just looking at an iPad learning module or a tablet learning module? And my second question is, have you used Milo with females?
There is one female in the study, as someone said, I think Brad said that it's 4.5 times more prevalent in boys than girls, so that's represented in my study. In terms of the iPad, there's been studies out there that have looked at that comparison. So I was looking at different comparison, and they found that they actually didn't use a humanoid robot, they used a dog robot, that the children engaged better with the robot than they did with the, did more engagement with the robot and talking when the co-therapist was a robot versus an iPad or a computer. But I want to say why I like Milo over an iPad. Because these children have social interactions. They can label. They can look anything at the iPad and they can label all the things on the iPad. They never look up and share that information with you. And so the iPad is bringing them back into their own world. Milo creates a bridge. Milo looks more human. He's talking back and forth. And so they're beginning to treat him as more of a human-ish qualities, and it's easier then to transfer that information to real humans.
My question is, are you looking to take this beyond a classroom environment into the patient's home?
Yes, I think right now we're starting with classroom environments so that we can see as many children as possible. And as I said, you know, there's always, with all therapy, there's always this feedback loop. But when you find out more information, you tweak that therapy. It's not a product just out there as a product, but it's really a labor of love to try to get the best possible therapy out there for these kids.
Hi, I'm Alan Cook with Science and Enterprise. Has RoboKind licensed your research, licensed your intellectual property? Is that part of what's in Milo right now? This might be more a question for
Are you saying have we licensed it to other?
No, have you licensed it from university?
No, actually, a lot of the IP or intellectual property in Milo is patented by us. There's been similar research with robots in universities. Primarily that research has been done with purpose-built in-house robots that they've built, or other types of robots, but specifically the facial expressions and the artificial intelligence and the ability to use the animations are all separate patents for RoboKind. We're really the first people to take this and combine it with real courseware and applications. All the data moves to the cloud. There's a whole set of technologies that we haven't even delved into. Yes?
We're in Succena with Fierce Medical Devices and The Wire too. So what stage is Milo in? Is it like commercially available? And did you have to go through FDA or anything to use?
Yeah, so he is commercially available. He's being used in schools and therapy centers now. We actually have a couple of parents who are using him. There isn't an FDA process for this. We're not subject to those processes. We do want to continue the research. Pam and her team will continue, and we'll look at other opportunities for research, but it's not really an FDA issue for us.
I have another question. Have you looked at how Milo might be able to help people with other learning problems?
Go ahead.
I do think that children with other language problems, if they have social language problems, would benefit. ADD children would really benefit this. We're really marketing it to autism, but all social communication problems, and there's a lot of them out there, would benefit from this curriculum. And then the company is also, this is the major project right now, but they're also getting into dementia, making him a pal for dementia, for early childhood reading, for STEM, this high school for STEM, and for teaching languages.
I would just add a little bit to that. Some of the early feedback from some of the schools, our research isn't focused on it, but our schools have been using him with kids with ADHD as well, because they feel like any of those kids that need social and emotional skills, he's beneficial in that regard. So again, we don't have research supporting that, but we do have feedback from the field that they've extended their use into other areas. Yes?
Sorry to be late, but a question regarding the spectrum of autism, whether Milo is only for the severe side of it. What do you do with the mild if we consider, as you may know, mild condition of autism and severe case of autism, how this would flow to that spectrum, 1
That's a really good question. The modules that we've written, they unfold developmentally. And so we looked at the greeting module, which some children might already have that piece. But because, as I said earlier, that this social communication and interaction problems persist throughout their life, children with autism, even who are mild, still have problems with social interaction. And so some of the later pieces of the module, like the children I showed you here, probably could not go through the entire greeting module. They'd go only through a couple of lessons, and then they'd have to be moved to the leave-taking that also progresses developmentally. So there are harder modules than the ones that you saw here.
Can I follow up on this? Do you think there would be a positive effect for the mild side to interact with the actual people instead of this? Is there any reservation about utilizing this at certain level or not?
We have not researched that, and that's something that I'm actually interested in. And so I'm unbeknownst to RoboKind, I am really trying to get some of my friends who are on the spectrum. I have a man who's a 31-year-old man who's on the Autism Council with me, who's on the spectrum, to come and to interact with Milo and to give me his feedback, and also to look at with children so that I can get that feedback and we can begin to address that issue.
Go ahead.
Shannon Firth from Page Today. Can you expand on how this might be used with people who have dementia? And is it possible also for there to be, I guess, modules for children who have the opposite problem in terms of their social cues? Like, for instance, children with Williams syndrome are it's a very rare genetic disease. I don't know how much. They're very, very trusting. So I wonder if you could use this in the opposite way to signal to children how to keep themselves safe versus how to be more friendly, how to be more, open and engaged.
That's all in the social story.
Yeah, let's take that in two pieces. So dementia/elder care. We're working with a partner right now developing modules for that area. We sort of see that in a couple of different categories, if you will. There'll be the initial engagement, assisted living type scenarios where patients may engage for music or history or calisthenics and that sort of thing. And then there'll be a deeper set of modules that work specifically on basically the 4 phases of dementia and addressing each of those cognitive levels with specific content. And again, we'll work with content area experts to develop that content. And then relative to your other question, I think Pam's probably more qualified to answer.
Well, although it seems like an oxymoron, there are children with Williams syndrome who are also on the spectrum. And they're seem very, very social on one level, but it's shallow. And so for that reason, there are things that Milo currently does, excuse me, that would be good for them. But because there's a wider range, the social stories and specific situations that we have may not be relevant at this point in time. That doesn't mean, like even for autistic children, we need to have stranger danger and other kinds of things that would be relevant for them. So we haven't gotten there yet, but it would be. Thank you.
Yeah, just one more point on dementia. We have been out in some initial pilot work, and we're seeing a very similar level of engagement. We haven't started the research there yet, but we're very excited about that.
I'm sorry, one more question on the dementia. What is the goal? Is it to lessen the symptoms, or what is the?
Well, so first of all, companionship, especially for folks that are shut in, that companionship and the caregiver role, and then the stimulation, providing modules that will engage the patient and try to keep them as active as they can. There's a lot of research that says that's beneficial to them over time. So that would be the goal. Is I don't think it's not about the cure or about trying to get the best result for those patients that we can.
One of the things I've been working with quite a few of the facilities with Milo, and music therapy works really well. We've been doing meditation. Milo will tell stories about celebrities from the 50s and 60s and do a lot of memory things. And the thing about Milo is just as with Pam's lessons, you can program him to give these wonderful lessons, these wonderful stories, these wonderful fables that staff at a lot of these places wouldn't even come close to do. So you can get really quality, right now we're looking at 25 to 35 minute sessions that combine, right now we have about 7 categories we're working on to see how they do. And most of the categories are 2 to 4 minute parts to it, like a story or a song or things like that. But we're seeing people with dementia that are not hardly moving. When he starts singing, he'll do a Frank Sinatra song right now, they will start with their knee and things like that, where they will sit here and do nothing, and then with the calisthenics, they'll raise their arms out of nowhere. So they're there, and they respond. So it's a question of creating stimulation that works with these people that's really positive. So it's been really exciting to see that type of thing in the people.
Thanks, Fred. Other questions? Go
I have
ahead.
a non-press question.
Sure.
So Jennifer Fritchie with CETA, State Educational Technology Directors Association.
Very well aware.
What kind of technical prowess is required of the practitioner? I guess what kind of training or how onerous is it for them?
All they have to understand is how to use an iPad. It's an app for your iPad or your Android device, so download it from Google Play or the App Store, and then it will automatically connect to your robot via an IP address. Really, the bigger set of training is the prerequisites in terms of understanding how to pre-qualify kids and make sure they're good candidates, how to use the extension activities. There's extension activities that come with the curriculum so that they can work with parents to use it at home, but technically very little is required. That was by design, of course.
Dr. Owens, what type, with this groundbreaking research, what type of support do you get from the university for this being done?
Robots, I think a lot of support right now. There's a big marketing campaign for UTD right now that's called Ingenious, and it's mostly about the university and the founders of the university. We're only 50 years old, the university, we're very new. And robots working with children, and my work is one of the main pieces in that campaign. And then we have a Calendar Cares program. It's a donor program we have at the end of the semester. And autism is going to be the highlight and the theme for this year. And they're going to highlight the pre-verbal program and the early class program, which my book is about. I developed the curriculum for that program, and Milo and the research that we've done with Milo. So I think that they've been really very, very supportive and very excited about this work.
For those of you who want it on the little thumb drives, there's the news release that summarizes today's results. There's some flyers and brochures, photographs, and other elements that might support what you need as well. So those are for you as well.
And on your desk or on your chairs, one is an overall description of Robots4Autism, the entire solution. The second piece of paper is a detailed layout of the curriculum and all the scope and sequence of that. Thanks again. If anybody has more questions, we can speak in the back. Thank you.
Thank you all.